Tonight we will continue with the Nectar of Instruction. Last week we covered the preface and the first verse of the Nectar of Instruction. Now, Srila Rupa Goswami has taught us in other places that that all of the principles that we follow in Krishna consciousness, all the rules, all the regulations, everything that we follow is simply for two purposes: to always remember Krishna and to never forget Krishna. So these two principles, they override or oversee everything that we do in Krishna consciousness. Everything we do is based upon these principles. Things that help us remember Krishna and things that we avoid which will make us forget Krishna. All the rules and regulations are based on these two principles. Now, the first verse of the Nectar of Instruction speaks about things that we need to avoid, things pertaining to the mind, the speech, and the body. And we need to avoid those things because if we don't avoid those things, we will forget Krishna. So that's what the first verse is teaching us. Now, this second verse, which we'll begin tonight we'll do verses 2 and 3. The second verse is also teaching us things which need to be avoided, because if we do not avoid them, we will also forget Krishna. So that is the basic principle. So tonight we'll begin with the second verse, which is very well-known verse. With the verses, as we've mentioned previously, there are 4 verses that you need to memorize for this, for the exam on the Nectar of Instruction. So the first 4 verses of the Nectar of Instruction, verses 1, 2, 3, and 4, you need to memorize. They're called key memory verses, or KMVs. So this is one of the KMVs that we need to memorize. Achahara, Priyashascha, Prajalpo, Niyamagraha, Janasangash, Chalolyamcha, Shadbya Bhaktir, Vinashyati. So I'll read the translation. One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities: eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required, over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically, associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness, and being greedy for mundane achievements. So these are the 6 things which we need to avoid if we want to advance in Krishna consciousness. So the Sanskrit, the word which is used at the end of the verse, the last line says, Shadbya Bhaktir Vinashyati. Vinashyati. vinyashati, means destroys. These 6 things destroy our bhakti. They're what we call, in Sanskrit, we call them pratikul. Pratikul means unfavorable. Anukul means favorable, but pratikul means unfavorable. So these 6 things are unfavorable to our devotional service. Vinashiti, they destroy our bhakti. Now, if we analyze them, because each one of them is a very powerful item that we need to avoid, if we analyze the 6, which one would we say is the cause of the other 5? If anyone has any idea or opinion or wants to guess, which one would cause the other 5? In Sanskrit, we call it Jana Sangha. Jana Sangha, which means associating with worldly minded people, materialistic people. Jana Sangha. It is also mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu gives the same instruction, because these instructions were written by Rupa Goswami. They are coming from Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu himself. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Asatsanga Tyaga E Vaishnava Acha. Vaishnava Acha means the behavior of a devotee is Asatsanga Tyag. He renounces Asatsanga, materialistic association. Asat. Asat means temporary, because everything material is temporary. So a devotee, he avoids materialistic association. And in this verse, Rupa Goswami says, Jana Sangash, worldly minded people, materialistic people. We need to avoid associating with materialistic people. Because the materialistic people, by associating with them, we will develop material desires. It is also mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? We are advised to avoid associating with women or with those people who are attached to women. So for women, you can take it the opposite way. You can say men, the opposite sex. We should avoid associating with the opposite sex for the purpose of sense gratification. Okay? So avoid associating with the opposite sex for sense gratification, or it says even worse, is associating with those who are attached to the opposite sex, because they are lusty in their consciousness. And because their consciousness is polluted by lust, by their association, we will also become lusty. We will also develop material desires and tendencies. So therefore, it is recommended, asatsanga tyago, jnana sangash. Be very careful about associating with materialistic people, because these other 5 negative qualities which destroy bhakti, those other 5 negative qualities, they will manifest if we associate with non-devotees, materialistically minded people, too much. Of course, we are actually ordered to associate with non-devotees, because how will the Krishna consciousness movement spread if we don't associate with non-devotees, with materialistic people. But the point is that we associate with the materialistic people to give them Krishna consciousness, not to take their association, rather to give. So we need to associate with materialistic people, but to uplift them, to assist them in becoming Krishna conscious. That is our focus. So we'll begin to read the purport, the commentary by Prabhupada on the Nectar of Instruction, the Upadeshamrita. So if you have any comments or questions as we go, then please ask. Prabhupada begins. Human life is meant for plain living and high thinking. Since all conditioned living beings are under the control of the Lord's third energy, this material world is designed so that one is obliged to work. So Prabhupada explains there are three energies based on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There is the Antaranga Shakti, the Bahiranga Shakti, and the Tatastha Shakti. There is the internal energy, the spiritual energy, the material energy, or the external energy, Bahiranga Shakti. And then there is the Tatastha Shakti. Tatastha means marginal. Tatastha means like the beach. The beach is Tatastha. Tatastha means margin. It's on the margin. It can be covered by water or it can be uncovered and dry. So the living entity is Tatastha, which means we can be covered by the material energy, or we can become, the material energy can uncover, and we can be situated in the spiritual energy. So we can be both as Tatastha Shakti or Jivas. So if you want to become more materialistic, which is not our desire because we're devotees, we want to become more absorbed in Krishna consciousness. If you want to become more materialistic, then associate with non-devotees, materialistic people, jana sanghas. And then these other negative attributes will also manifest in our consciousness, the things we need to avoid. So everything is about association. We are sangat sanjayate kama. Kama means desire. Desires manifest according to the association that we keep. Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? If you associate with spiritual people, you will become spiritual. If you associate with material people, materialists, you will become a materialist. Association is all important in spiritual life. Further down, Prabhupada says, being subordinate as eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Jivatmas, or atomic living entities, must remain under the control of either the internal or external potency. When they are under the control of the internal potency, they display their natural, constitutional activity, namely constant engagement in devotional service of the Lord. Mahatmanastumam partha daivim prakritim ashrita. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, the great souls, the devotees, they are situated in the internal energy. So we want to, because we are conditioned souls. We've been in this material world since time immemorial. And now, due to association with the material energy, we have developed material desires. So how do we overcome these material desires? How do we get back into the spiritual energy? It's by the association that we keep. If we associate with devotees, then we will become a devotee. And as Prabhupada says, by constant engagement in devotional service of the Lord. We have to constantly engage in bhakti yoga, in devotional service. And by constantly engaging in devotional service and associating with those who are constantly engaged in devotional service, we will become purified in our consciousness. In the next paragraph, Prabhupada says, the word Mahatma refers to those who are broad-minded, not cripple-minded. Cripple-minded persons always engage in satisfying their senses. They may reject personal sense gratification for the sense gratification of others. So a materialist always engages in sense gratification. They may even become altruistic, right? And try to look after people in the material world. But ultimately, that is also sense gratification. Unless we are trying to help someone become Krishna conscious, right? Our activities are considered to be materialistic or sense based on sense gratification. Then on page 17, at the top, Prabhupada says, this pleasure potency is manifested as Srimati Radharani or her expansion Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. When the individual jiva souls are under the control of the internal energy, their only engagement is the satisfaction of Krishna. This position is that of a Mahatma. So we also want to become Mahatmas, great souls. We want to become advanced devotees. We don't want to remain neophyte devotees. What is the symptom of a neophyte devotee? He's always struggling to practice Krishna consciousness, struggling with the mind and the senses. We don't want to remain like that. We want to become advanced devotees. You know, if we're going to practice Krishna consciousness, we might as well become an advanced devotee. Why be a neophyte devotee who's always struggling with the mind and the senses? Purify ourselves by the process of practicing bhakti yoga and then become strong in devotional service and develop a taste for Krishna consciousness, for devotional service, and fully engage and advance rapidly. That is the mission of human life. Down the bottom of page 17, Prabhupada says, the main problem confronting the conditioned souls is the repetition of birth, old age, disease, and death. So we want to overcome birth, disease, old age, and death. You know, if we're sober, as the first verse said, if we become dhira, we don't want to take birth again in this material world. So therefore, if we practice Krishna consciousness seriously, we can overcome the cycle of birth and death once and for all, the samsara chakra. At the bottom of page 17, Prabhupada says, everyone requires possessions such as food grains, clothing, money, and other things necessary for the maintenance of the body. But one should not collect more than necessary for his actual basic needs. If this natural principle is followed, there will be no difficulty in maintaining the body. So what is the first negative quality that Rupa Goswami mentions in this verse? It is called achahara, overeating or collecting more than necessary. And if you look at modern society, materialistic society, today I had to go to Warren Ponds. It's a very holy place, close to our farm, because that's where we do our shopping. So I had to go there because I had things I needed to buy for the farm. to engage in service for Krishna. But obviously this time of year, it's just before Christmas, and people are in a materialistic state of consciousness. It was very interesting. I was listening to the radio for a little bit, and they were interviewing one, I think he's a psychologist, and he was speaking about what happens at Christmas time, because Christmas is a problematic time in society, right? A lot of people go into debt, which causes them anxiety and stress. A lot of people feel overwhelmed by the entire situation. So he said for a lot of people, they actually struggle at Christmas time. It's actually not a pleasant time. It's actually a difficult experience. And a lot of this is based on this first principle that Rupa Goswami is teaching us, achahara. Do not over-collect or overeat. And this is what people do in materialistic society. I was in the shopping center today. It was full of people over-collecting. You know, we work hard all week to then on the weekend or weekday, we go to the shopping centers, we buy things that we don't really need to impress people that we don't really like. That's materialistic life. But everyone's trapped. The Rupa Goswami said, this will destroy your bhakti. If you're overeating, you're over-collecting unnecessarily material things, it will destroy your bhakti. Page 18 at the top, Prabhupada says, according to nature's arrangement, living entities lower on the evolutionary scale do not eat or collect more than necessary. You know, Prabhupada gives the example, the elephant. Right? The elephant eats several tons of food every day, and he's provided that. Krishna will provide everything for everyone if they simply follow his laws, as we learned in the Ishopanishad. If you follow the Ishavasya principle, right? And you don't over-collect and you just live according to what is necessary to keep your body and soul together, then everything will be provided for you. So don't over-collect. It's not necessary. And don't overeat. It's not necessary. As Prabhupada says, according to, at the bottom of the paragraph, according to scriptures, this collecting of more than necessary achahara is prohibited. Now the entire world is suffering because of it. Collecting and eating more than necessary also causes prayash, which is the next negative quality. Unnecessary endeavor. Achahara priyashas. Priyash means unnecessary endeavor, over-endeavoring. Right? And you see the whole society is doing that, over-endeavoring, working so hard. Everyone's exhausting themselves, over-endeavoring for material acquisition. So this will also destroy our bhakti, our devotional service to Krishna. Page 19, Prabhupada says, human life is meant for God realization, and the human being is given higher intelligence for this purpose. Those who believe that this higher intelligence is meant to attain a higher state should follow the instructions of the Vedic literatures. By taking such instructions from higher authorities, one can actually become situated in perfect knowledge and give real meaning to life. So we should develop higher intelligence and hear from higher authorities and follow these principles that which are being spoken of here in the Nectar of Instruction by Srila Rupa Goswami. As I said last week, I think I said at the end of the class, The first three verses, verses 1, 2, and 3, are the secrets of bhajan. I think I mentioned this. The secrets of practicing sadhana or devotional service. If we follow the instructions of verse 1, 2, and 3, we will become successful in our sadhana or our bhajan or our practice of sadhana bhakti. At the bottom of page 19, Prabhupada says, the first step in human civilization consists of occupational engagements performed according to the scriptural injunctions. The higher intelligence of a human being should be trained to understand basic dharma. So we should understand the basic principles. Rupa Goswami is giving us the essence of instruction, the basic principles of how to perfect our human form of life. Prabhupada says halfway down through page 20, Prabhupada says, true religion, however, instructs people to be satisfied with the bare necessities of life while cultivating Krishna consciousness. Even though we require economic development, true religion allows it only for supplying the bare necessities of material existence. So the bare necessities of human life. What it means, how do we translate that into the modern context? We should live a middle-class existence. Because if you live less than middle class, which is bordering on poverty, it'll be difficult for you to practice Krishna consciousness because your mind might be disturbed. And also other people will not be attracted to follow our movement if they see everyone's living in poverty. Secondly, if we have too much money or too much material acquisition, then it's also a distraction to our Krishna consciousness. So we should just live the middle path. We should just live a middle class existence. That's ideal for practicing Krishna consciousness. At the bottom of page 20, Prabhupada says, another impediment is prajalpa, unnecessary talking. If we must talk, we should talk about the Krishna consciousness movement. So many people talk. We're saying this in the first verse. Vacho vegam. They can't control the desire to speak. And they speak all sorts of nonsense. So prajalpa means materialistic talk, unnecessary talk. Gramya kata, village talk. This will destroy our devotional service. So as Prabhupada says, we should speak about the Krishna consciousness movement. Just like I was speaking to Atulya before, about our movement, about, the Krishna consciousness movement, how it is spreading, different things that we're trying to do to spread the movement. These topics purify the consciousness. What to speak of direct discussion about Krishna's pastimes. These topics purify the consciousness. Materialistic topics, they pollute the consciousness. Prabhupada says at the top of page 21, he says, all these and other frivolous activities are included in the prajalpa category. Intelligent persons interested in Krishna consciousness should never take part in such activities. So Prabhupada says, in the Western countries, old men retired from active life play cards, fish, watch television, and debate about useless socio-political schemes. And that's what a lot of old people do. And it's a waste of the human form of life. Now, the next Achahara Priyachascha, Prajalpo Niyamagraha. Next, we're hearing Jana Sangash. Jana Sangha. Jana Sangha means associating with the worldly minded people. Jana Sangash refers to associating with the persons not interested in Krishna consciousness. One should strictly avoid each such association. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has therefore advised us to live only in the association of Krishna conscious devotees. Bhaktasani Vas. So we should be very careful about who we associate with. As we said in the beginning, Jana Sangash. This also includes on the internet, because now we don't even have to meet people. We can just associate all day on, Facebook, Instagram, Netflix, on the web. There's so much materialistic association. And if we take that too much, it will influence our consciousness. We'll lose our desire to become serious about Krishna consciousness. Then on page 22, at the bottom of the second paragraph, Prabhupada says, unless the karmis and jnanis become interested in Krishna consciousness, they will simply continue to waste their life in fruitless activities. At the top of page 23, Prabhupada says, those interested in Krishna consciousness should not be eager to accept rules and regulations for economic advancement, yet they should very faithfully accept scriptural rules and regulations for the advancement of Krishna consciousness. So this is called niyamagraha. Niyamagraha means accepting the rules and regulations too strictly or fanatically, or neglecting them too much or altogether. These two things will destroy our devotional service. If we follow all the rules and regulations like a fanatic, but not even knowing why we're doing it, that can actually destroy our Krishna consciousness. It can go too far following the rules and regulations, especially if we're not following them to come closer to Krishna, but just to be fanatical. Similarly, if we neglect the rules and the regulations, we will also destroy our Krishna consciousness. So it's a very fine line. We have to follow both in order to advance in Krishna consciousness. And then finally, the last quality, Prabhupada says, second paragraph down on page 23, desires to expand the mind by perfecting mystic yoga, merging into the Brahman, or attaining whimsical material prosperity are all included within the category of greed, loya. All attempts to acquire such material benefits or so-called spiritual advancement are impediments on the path of Krishna consciousness. So loya, lopa, it means too much desire or greed. And even I was speaking today to the man at the petrol station, and he said to me, he said, people are too greedy in this, too materialistic and greedy. And we all know it because we see it around us. It will destroy your bhakti. And that's why people cannot take to devotional service, even when we offer it to them, because they're too greedy for material things. And where does materialistic greed come from? By associating with greedy people. You look at Donald Trump. He wants to become the president of America again next year. He's a greedy person. And by his association, other people become greedy. And then they can't take to Krishna consciousness. So these 6 qualities we have to avoid. Okay. If you have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we will begin text number 3. So verses 1 and 2, they are the things we must avoid. They're called practical, or things that are unfavorable to advancing Krishna consciousness. Now, verses 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 will give us the things which are favorable, which are anukul, or which will help us to advance in Krishna consciousness. So I'll read the Sanskrit for verse number 3. Utsahan, nishchayad, daryat, tat kama, pravartanat, sangachagat, sato vrite, shadbya bhakti, prasidyati. Translation. There are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. Number 1, being enthusiastic. Number 2, endeavoring with confidence. Number 3, being patient. Number 4, acting according to the regulative principles, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. Number 5, abandoning the association of non-devotees. And 6, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. So, in the last verse, it said, Shadbya Bhaktiya Vinashyati. In this verse, it says, Shadbya Bhakti Prasidyati. Prasidyati means it helps us become successful. The last 6 items in verse 2, they destroy our bhakti, vinashyati. Now, in this verse, there are 6 things which are given to us, which are prasidyati. Prasidyati means things that will make us successful in our devotional service. Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, devotional service is not a matter of sentimental speculation or imaginative ecstasy. Its substance is practical activity. It's practical. Devotional service is practical. Right? How do we express our love for Krishna, our devotion to Krishna? We serve him. We do practical service to lead us towards Krishna. Page 28. Uttama Bhakti involves the rendering of devotional service in a way that is favorable to the Lord. This devotional service should be free from any extraneous motive and devoid of fruitive karma, impersonal jnana, and all other selfish desires. This is the definition of bhakti. Pure devotional, it is favorable towards Krishna. It is free from material desires. Prabhupada says, bhakti is a sort of cultivation. As soon as we say cultivation, we must refer to activity. Cultivation of spirituality does not mean sitting down idly for meditation. Like when people come to the Hare Krishna movement, they learn to do practical service for the pleasure of Krishna. We don't just run meditation classes where everyone just sits down and they just go silent. No. Vrishikena Rishikesha Sevana Bhakti Uchite. Devotional service means engaging our senses in the service of the master of the senses. Prabhupada says devotional service not only puts an end to all nonsensical mundane activities, but also engages one in meaningful devotional activities. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, keep all materialistic activities far away by the practice of devotional service. So then Prabhupada mentions the 9 ways, which Prahlad Maharaj mentions in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam. There are 9 ways that we can serve Krishna. Prabhupada then explains that the first of the 9 items is Shravanam, and the best way to, which means hearing, how do we learn how to serve Krishna? We hear from self-realized souls by pure devotees how to serve Krishna. On page 30, Prabhupada says, when by good fortune one comes in contact with a pure devotee and hears from him patiently, one begins to follow the path of devotional service. Such an opportunity is offered to a person who is sincere. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is giving such a chance to humanity at large. So we're teaching people how to engage in the service of Krishna. So at the end of page 30, Prabhupada speaks about the first quality. What is the first quality that is favorable for bhakti? It is called utsahan. Utsahan means enthusiasm. Even the word sounds enthusiastic. Utsahan. Utsaha means enthusiasm. You have to be enthusiastic if you want to advance in Krishna consciousness. Where does enthusiasm come from? It comes from bliss. When you are getting pleasure from Krishna consciousness, you become enthusiastic to do more service to Krishna. So the more service we do for Krishna, the more enthusiasm we will have to do service for Krishna. Prabhupada says, one should accept this opportunity to return home back to Godhead very enthusiastically. Similarly, one has to be very enthusiastic in devotional service. Enthusiasm means action. That action should be for Krishna. Top of page 31, Prabhupada says, in all phases of life, one has to perform devotional activities under the direction of the Guru in order to attain perfection in Bhakti Yoga. So, in order to become perfect as a devotee, you need training. Where does training come from? It comes from our gurus, our Diksha Guru, our Shiksha Gurus. They train us how to serve Krishna. Top of page 32, Prabhupada says, endeavor executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called utsaha, or enthusiasm. It's a very nice statement Prabhupada makes. Endeavor executed with intelligence. This is enthusiasm. We have to serve Krishna with our intelligence. Top of page 33, Srila Prabhupada says, Tat tat karma pravartana. Neglect of the regulative principles will destroy our devotional service. Further down he says, if one becomes slack in following any of them, his progress will certainly be checked. Rupa Goswami therefore recommends tat tat karma pravartana. One must strictly follow the regulative principles of Vaidhi Bhakti. So there are so many rules and regulations which are given. In the next book that we'll study, the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami gives us 64 items of devotional service, 64 ways that we can serve Krishna. Right? These items are given by Rupa Goswami. 64 ways to serve Krishna. We cannot neglect the items of bhakti, especially the 5 most powerful items of bhakti. If we neglect them, we will not advance in Krishna consciousness. Right? To associate with devotees, to chant the holy name, to hear the Bhagavatam, to reside in a holy place, and to worship the deity. If we neglect those, we will not advance in our Krishna consciousness. So then, on page 34, Prabhupada mentions this is called Vishuddha Sattva, a platform of pure goodness, or goodness free from the contamination of the qualities of passion and ignorance. In the Krishna consciousness movement, we require everyone to rise early in the morning by 4 a.m. and attend Mangalarti, or morning worship, and then Srimad Bhagavatam, perform kirtan and so forth. Thus we hold continuous activities in devotional service 24 hours a day. This is called Satovritti, or following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas who expertly filled every moment of time with Krishna conscious activities. Mentioned within the items of bhakti, tat tat karma pravartanat. We should act according to the regulative principles. We should not neglect the items of bhakti which are given to us by our predecessor acharyas. And Satovrite means we should follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. Whatever Prabhupada did and whatever the previous gurus did, we should follow their footsteps. And then we will perfect our human form of life. So then Prabhupada says at the bottom of page 34, if one strictly follows the advice given in this verse by Rupa Goswami, namely being enthusiastic, being confident, being patient, these first 3 items. In order to advance in Krishna consciousness, we have to be enthusiastic. Secondly, we have to be confident or determined in bhakti. Because to become a pure devotee is not easy. To give up your material attachments is not easy. Nishchayad means you have to become determined. You have to become confident that if I follow this process, I will get the goal. And finally, dhairya. Dhairya means patient. because it will take time for us to become fully Krishna conscious. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes years and years. Prabhupada, actually, I heard the Holy Name retreat I was on a few weeks ago. Srila Prabhupada actually said, I heard one of the senior devotees say, Prabhupada said it takes 50 years to perfect your chanting. 50 years to perfect your chanting. And some of the devotees on the retreat had been practicing for 50 years. It takes time to perfect our chanting. So we have to be enthusiastic, confident, and patient. We have to give up the association of unwanted materialistic persons, follow the regulative principles, as it says, tatat karma pravartanat, follow everything very nicely. We also have to give up the association of non-devotees. It's very interesting because in the previous verse, 6 things we have to give up. One of them is the association of the non-devotees. And then in this verse, 6 things we have to accept. It's mentioned again. Sangat tyagat. Give up the association of materialistic people. It's mentioned in verse 2 and 3. Very interesting. Because if you don't give up the association of materialistic people, you won't advance. So be enthusiastic, be determined, confident, be patient. Follow all the regulations, all the rules, all of the items of bhakti that we're meant to practice. Follow them very carefully. Give up the association of the non-devotees. And the 6th item that we must adapt to become successful in our bhakti is to follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, Satobhrite. If we follow these 6, we will be successful, prasiddhiti, in our bhakti. Prabhupada says on page 35, engagement in the devotional service of the Lord is the life and soul of the living entity. It is the desired goal and supreme perfection of human life. One has to become confident about this, and one also has to be confident that all activities other than devotional service, such as mental speculation, fruitive work, or mystic endeavor, will never yield any enduring benefit. So, we have to become confident this is the life and soul of the living entity. Krishna consciousness has to become our life and our soul. Everything else is temporary and insignificant in comparison. Then on page 38, on the final paragraph of this purport, Srila Prabhupada says, since all the devotees of the Lord are under the protection of his supreme potency, they should not deviate from the path of devotional service and take to the path of the kami, jnani, or yogi. This is called utsahan nischaya dharya tatat karma pravartanat. Enthusiastically executing the regulative principles of devotional service with patience and confidence. In this way, one can advance in devotional service without hindrance. So these are the 6 things that we should do and the 6 things that we should not do if we want to advance in our Krishna consciousness. Does anyone have any questions or comments on anything we have discussed? Okay. Very nice to have you all with us.